I would tell my 23-year-old self to know who you are, to know your value, to know your value. Some people take this lightly, but I'll give you an example. Why would a woman, a girl in school, pursuing a wonderful education, whose, destiny is sure, you can see she's a good performer, she has everything that she requires to be a success in this world, why would she get to a level one day of compromising to a place of saying, I think let me try to take over that woman's husband? And they went quiet. What's that thing in her that can't tell her that you have enough value in you to wait for yours? Do you get it? What's in the mind of a young man who would compromise if they are told, you're working in this organization and we can pay you 70 million so you can help us defraud this organization? And the young man says, yes, it's value. What's in the mind of that young man who was given school fees? And the other day I had, was it Professor Walonywa? They did a research, I think, in Makerere University, and they were researching why we're seeing a lot of dropouts in university. And it was confirmed through research that about 1,000 students every year do not graduate because they are gambling. What's in the brain of that young man who would get their fees and take it into a casino and bet it on something and lose it all? Like, what's in his head? If you search that person, they really don't know their value, their true value. There's something about knowing who you are. I tell people, all my life I never went to club, not because I was a very good person, not because I was more righteous than everyone, but there was always something that told me that I'm not that kind of person. I just thought, some of my friends tried weed, cigarettes, alcohol, but I never did it because there was just something in me that always told me that the person, there's something on my life that can't allow me to do that. Now, I'm not judging or criticizing those who are weak, because no man is perfect in the flesh, but I'm only trying to say there's something so powerful about firstly knowing your value. At what price can you be bought? At what price can you be compromised? At what price can you sell your family? Can you sell your children? Because there's a price. How many people have you heard? Some of you in African societies have seen this, where a person says, we're going to give you all the wealth, give us your child. And a man, without any hesitation, gives over their firstborn as teraphim for sacrifice. That kind of man, if you get into his heart, he has no hope of making wealth except to kill his own child. When you know your value, there's a confidence. It stirs in you. There's a certain affirmation that you carry that you don't need to hear the praises of men for you to stand. Neither their criticisms. I don't live by criticism nor praise. I live by that indelible mark that God can. The Bible calls that treasure in earthen vessels. Now listen, that the excellence of power may be of God and not of us. Again, excellency has come here because you know that you carry certain treasure. You know who you are. You know your value. If you make mistakes along the way, but you know your value, you're different from a man who makes those mistakes and doesn't know their value. There's probably somebody who got pregnant in school, made their, aligned themselves back, went back to school. Yes, you made your mistake, but you know your value. But there's one who actually doesn't understand what I'm saying. However, when this confidence comes also, the pendulum swings on the place of also understanding how to balance that with humility. To be great and to stay humble. Because some of the people who are destroyed in life are not necessarily people who did not know their value, but they're people who never carried the wisdom or enough judgment to discern the humility that should come with their greatness. And whatever they received in life became heavier than them. And once it becomes heavier than you, it devalues you even when you do not know. You see what I'm saying? I'll give you an example. In football, some of you watch football, some of us who follow football. There was a young man who was spoken about in Manchester United. He used to play for Manchester. He was a Brazilian boy. They brought him from Brazil once and they brought him to Manchester. How many remember that young man? What was his name? Carlos? Not Anderson. Anderson performed. Robinho, thank you. Now Robinho, one time they're interviewing another player in Manchester United. For those of you who don't follow football like my wife, they're interviewing another player in the same team. And they are asking him if you were to give, they were now asking him about Robinho as a player. What was your feel about this player when he was still playing with a team and stuff like that? And then this player retorted and said, this was one of those men that was 100 times more gifted than us, but he never had time. He never had time to, he never gave time to practice. He was too proud. He was a man who was too exalted. He knew his gift. All right. So while his friends would go training, this guy would chill in the bed because he knows he's going to come on the pitch and what? And perform. And because of that, this fellow was one of the worst performing players, even though he was one of the most gifted. Everybody saw his potential when he held the ball, but they never see the effectiveness of his gift, because he never handled it in humility. And humility is simply submitting to the principles and patterns as God has designed them to be in true judgment, to know how to judge matters. And that humility, sometimes some of you actually, and I feel so sorry, especially for the younger generation, they're unteachable, they're untrainable, they're entitled. They want to, when you hire him today, he wants to be manager tomorrow, you know, and drive a Range Rover the next week. You see, you can't correct them. You're wrong. They know better than. You see what I'm saying? Eh? Now, to yes, know your value, but not carry the judgment that comes with the humility to know how to exercise both the value and the grace to handle it. Huh? To know that I am great, but this requires me to belittle myself to this extent if I must go to the next level. And I think even as we're raising children, I've shared with one parent here, we must really emphasize that. Give our children a confident humility. Teach them confidence and to know who they are, but also not let that consume them to a place where they feel that they're exalted above everybody else. To not forget that they're actually human beings and they're also subject to the flows of life. To keep them humble.